When you're a child, your world is entirely immediate. You break a glass, and it's gone. You rarely notice the adult hands that spent the last decade lunging to catch things before they hit the floor. It takes years to recognize the invisible exhaustion of the people keeping you alive. The poet Robert Hayden understood this gap in perspective. Raised in a Detroit neighborhood called Paradise Valley, Hayden grew up in a house defined by the grueling physical labor and economic anxiety of his foster father. By the 1930s, the city was caught in the grip of the Great Depression. Survival in this environment required a relentless, quiet endurance that left little room for outward affection. Decades later, Hayden captured this reality in his poem, Those Winter Sundays. Today, it is regarded as a masterpiece of American literature. But on a first reading, the text feels startlingly cold. There are no hugs or declarations of warmth. Instead, it is a portrait of silence, labor, and a child's lingering fear. The poem begins with the speaker's father waking up on a Sunday, his only day off. He rises before the sun, stepping into what Hayden calls the blue-black cold of the house. This is a man whose body is already battered by the work week. Hayden describes the father's cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather. Despite the pain, the father goes to the furnace alone. He shovels the coal and banks the fires, coaxing the flames to life so the house will be warm before his family wakes. He does this in absolute isolation. As the first stanza concludes, Hayden notes a devastating fact. No one ever thanked him. Upstairs, the child finally wakes. He lies in bed listening to the cold, splintering, breaking, as the heat from the furnace fights against the frost. Even as the air warms, the boy hesitates. He lingers under the covers, deterred by the cold and a deep fear of the house's chronic angers. When his father calls, the boy finally gets dressed and comes downstairs. But when they cross paths, the child speaks to him indifferently. The boy accepts the warmth of the room while ignoring the polished surface of his good Sunday shoes, another solitary task his father finished before sunrise. That is where the literal plot ends. We are left with a chasm of emotional distance between a silent father and an ungrateful son. It forces us to ask why a poem this bleak is considered a definitive work on love. To understand Hayden's intent, examine the physical structure of the text. Count the lines on the page, and you will find exactly 14. In literature, this rigid structure defines the sonnet, a framework used for centuries to declare romantic passion. Hayden takes this traditional architecture and fills it with the grit of an impoverished Detroit winter. He forces the classical structure to hold the image of a bruised laborer packing coal into a furnace. By stripping away the expected rhyme and meter, he hides the poem's true identity. The reader does not realize they are reading a sonnet until the final lines, mirroring the speaker's own delayed realization that he was experiencing love all along. This realization anchors the poem's final, repetitive question. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? The word offices is the key to the poem's theme. In a literal sense, an office is a grueling duty. It is an obligation, a shift you must work whether you feel like it or not. But in a religious context, offices are solemn, ritualistic acts of worship. They are services performed out of devotion to a higher call. The father's labor is a solitary act of provision. He uses hands already cracked from a week of industrial work to bring fire into a freezing, dark house. It is a physical sacrifice made for a family that hasn't even woken up to see it. Through the lens of adulthood, the speaker finally understands that in a world defined by survival, love rarely sounds like a romantic sonnet. It is an austere, lonely duty performed long before the sun comes up. The father's silence was not a symptom of anger. For a man ground down by the depression, that physical labor was the only language of care he had left to offer. The indifferent child could not comprehend that language, but the adult Robert Hayden answers his father's silent labor with the precise clarity of this poem. The poem serves as a retroactive apology. Through the permanence of art, Hayden offers the gratitude his father never received while he was alive. those winter Sundays indoors because it forces us to look back at the quiet, harsh realities of our own caretakers. It asks us to translate their silent sacrifices into the declarations of love they were always meant to be.